Dirk Frese. I'm the Executive Director of Wisdom. Wisdom is a nonprofit and stands for Women in Science Demonstrating Outstanding Merits. And it stands for that we are enabling young female students really to make the transition from academia into industry. And we think there are a lot of opportunities out there which sometimes are overlooked and seem to be frightening. And we want to shed some light on that. And we also think there's a lot of value in having a higher female representation in industry. So that's what Wisdom stands for. And I'm very happy to have on our first podcast in a series here, Laura Marsh as our guest. This is our inaugural podcast, as Laura recently said, and I'm so happy to have you here. Laura is a scientist. Laura came from academia. She will share her stories with us right away. And then she moved out of academia, not into industry per se, but she became an entrepreneur. She started her own thing, which is so exciting. And the company is called Nova Conservation. And I'm very curious to hear more about that. Laura, please let us know a little bit about you and your background.
Oh, sure. So I'll try to keep it brief. I studied at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, a large state public school. And I studied ecology and evolutionary biology. I loved it. Actually, it started in engineering, and I absolutely hated engineering, but I was good at math and science, so that's what my family thought I should do. Instead, I wanted to curl up in a ball after every single engineering class. So what I did is I went to the course catalog because we had actual paper catalogs in 2006. And so I circled all the classes that I wanted to take, and they included conservation biology, ichthyology, aquatic ecology, ornithology, conservation. And they all fell into EEB, which was ecology and evolutionary biology. And I just loved it. And I've never looked back since then. Now, the career field has been challenging, to say the least, because there's not a lot of money in conservation. And we'll talk about that as we move forward. But I'm so passionate about it. I love every aspect. And the more I've learned, the more I've just wanted to share my passion for the planet and why ecology and the environmental career is so important.
That sounds very exciting. So what caught your specific interest then in conservation? So you said to save the planet. That's a huge goal, of course, but I understand that that's coming from. But...
Yeah. So a lot of people think that in order to be a conservationist, they think I must have grown up going camping every weekend or hiking all the time, or I grew up in the suburbs of Memphis, which is kind of a concrete city in the sense of it's just urban sprawl. It's not pretty. There's not a lot of green spaces, not a lot of outdoor spaces. Mm-hmm. So when I came to East Tennessee, the mountains and the majesty and the beauty and the ecosystems that surrounded me were just incredible. And I thought I wanted to go into marine biology in the sense of studying tropical coral reefs and that ecosystem. But, well, first, state schools are cheaper, so I just kind of had to put that aside. And I fell in love with the diversity that is in our own backyard in the United States, in the inland United States too. So taking advantage of that and just going to all the field classes. I went on trips and went out in the field as much as possible through my undergraduate. And I knew I wanted to keep pursuing this with a master's. So my specific focus was in birds. So I was really interested in birds, and it took a while to get there. I just didn't know right away. I wanted to study birds, but I did a master's studying the energetic rates, so the energetic condition of birds on trails near people and then away from people on trails. So, the birds that flew by that we misnetted, we captured them and put an aluminum band on their legs. That's, with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, or it was with Fish and Wildlife. Now it's U.S. Geological Survey issued. But so we measured their essentially birds' body mass index to see how healthy they were in trails and then away from trails. And it turns out the resident species, so cardinals, chickadees, titmice, those species did significantly better near people, which is interesting. I think they're just acclimated and adapted to people on trails and living in that micro habitat next to people.
What did they profit from then where people were around? Did the people feed them, or what happened there?
Right. Some people think that, and I can understand, like, there are invasive species kind of that eat Cheetos and human food, or even like the backyard bird feeders. I think what it was is the acclimation of like chickadees and cardinals specifically near humans, because the resident species in my backyard, they're very comfortable with me. They know me. They know that I'm not a threat or a predator. But if you think about from a bird's perspective, if you're a migratory bird trying to travel across thousands of miles across the United States and across Central America, any perceived movement can be seen as a threat. So you want to stay away from people. So I think resident species that know humans are not threats were just able to access different resources in these natural ecosystems. It could have been related to people feeding them through bird feeders, but where we were is not necessarily that type of habitat. So I'm not 100% sure that it would take more study.
Very interesting. And you said, I don't have to go for tropical areas to find beauty. You find beauty also hidden in the backyard, which is a very great statement. I think there's beauty all around. And as a conservationist, you could have gone also for insects or others or reptiles, but you decided, no, I go for birds. So why are birds so much more interesting for you personally? Because they fly around and have three dimensions in their living space, or?
I think that's a huge factor. Even as a little girl, I remember writing an essay in 4th grade. What animal do you want to be? And I chose a bird. I chose a toucan specifically. And I think looking back now, I don't know. I think I chose a bird because of their freedom to be able to navigate, not just like laterally in 2 dimensions on the ground, but all over. I mean, it's kind of like, maybe that's where my fascination came from actually too, in coral reefs, because that is a 3-dimensional ecosystem as well. But then I didn't live near a coral reef, and I tried to get my scuba diving license. I tried to make my way to the ocean, but it just wasn't the plan for me. So having that same sense of freedom and flexibility in the air as a bird, I never put that together actually until just right now. Also, I did take a scuba diving class, and it kind of terrifies me. So I backed away from that aspect, and now I look at birds through binoculars.
That's interesting, because scuba diving gives you this freedom of the 3rd dimension, but still you are a little bit confined because you have to wear the gear and you are dependent on the oxygen supply. So again, you are not totally free. And we share this love for freedom, honestly. And therefore, the current times here with the pandemic, everything, we all feel too confined, I think. So I totally get your core value being free. And that relates perhaps back to your career as well. How did you feel in academia? Did you feel fully free to do what you wanted to do, or was that already more difficult? You also referred to the economical situation, that people are not paid very well. So that's also a limitation of freedom. So I see this now as a continuing theme in your career. So you are looking for freedom as much as you can, and then you left academia. Can you talk about that? Was academia for you something which confined you in a certain way, or did you feel freedom there?
Good question. That's a really good question, because there's so many different avenues to take with that. So the areas in academia that I felt free in, that I loved about being in academia, when I was teaching, I was not micromanaged. So I went and got my master's, and then I taught at the university for just a few semesters. And I loved the freedom of not being micromanaged. I managed my own class. I did what I created my own assignments. I had my own tests. I was flexible in my schedule. That was pretty freeing. And actually, for a time, I thought, this is a great career. Why would I want to leave this? I mean, careers are so hard to find in conservation. Why would I want to leave this and try my own thing? And it was because it wasn't right for me. Now, if you are a teacher minded person, academia is great. There are a lot of caveats with that. For example, I chose not to go and get on my PhD because I did not want to be in the publisher perish mindset. I just didn't want to fight that fight. Some people, especially in conservation fields, love to publish, love to get the grants, love to write, churn it out, do the stats, sit at their computers, and more credit to you. I did not feel like that was for me and my path. And I felt like by not going down the PhD route, I could give that a position to someone else who really might have wanted that. Now, when I chose to leave academia and pursue my own organization, I'm entrepreneurial in nature, which I didn't realize I was so entrepreneurial, but I've been thinking about this idea, thinking about it, tossing it around in my head for so long. What's the most effective way to give back to conservation? And that's another thing, that teaching was very effective in the sense of I felt like I was communicating knowledge and information to a large group.
And you inspired others with your passion, I'm sure.
Right. Yes.
And rewarding. Yes.
It is very rewarding. And so that was another thing. I was like, well, should I stay in this or could I do more by doing XYZ, doing something else? Because like I also was a field biologist and I did many seasons in the field. And there were some days where I was catching a bird and putting one band on its leg and then the rest of the day doing nothing and getting paid nothing for it and thinking, how is this helping conservation? I mean, I don't know, would it be, anyway, so it just kept going back to, in my mind, I'm thinking, what's the most effective way to help conservation? Surely it's not just repairing mist nets all the day. There's got to be more to it than that. But I didn't feel like it was teaching as rewarding as it was. So I came down to, what does conservation need the most of? Finances. They need money.
Of course, yeah. Like in a lot of research areas. So let me chime in here perhaps as well with my own experience in academia. So I also always loved doing research, and I felt, and I was raised in the sense that academia is full freedom, that you can really pursue the interests that you have and find out new solutions, innovations. And so I'm a biochemist, and I did go down that route to make a PhD. But then I realized that there is not the freedom that I always thought, because you were talking about grant applications. Finally, that really, I spent the whole day in writing grant applications for my team and my lab. And then I got third-party financing, which came then from Big Pharma. So then we had to test certain substances to develop new pharmaceutical drugs. So what about that freedom then? Because then I had to test substance A from pharma company B. So yes, we did that in this intention of finding out something about aging, which is an interesting topic, but the freedom wasn't the one that I initially thought there might be, exactly as you said. And also finances are always an issue in each and every research that you do. And so I also then transitioned away from academia because of that, just to sustain my own family and in a better way. And that gave me the freedom that I was looking for. So obviously you were looking for something similar, and then you are really very brave. Honestly, I admire you for that. You started your own company, and that is Nova Conservation, as you just said. So we love to learn, of course, more what Nova Conservation is doing. And what piqued my interest is you have a very beautiful logo, which is a bison or a buffalo. And then I thought, why is it a buffalo when you are an ornithologist? So you have to explain that to me. What's the background of it?
Okay, I can explain all of those things. But thank you for saying I'm brave. That's very kind of you. I am actually also, I feel very privileged in the sense of I had this idea and I'm privileged enough to be able to take the leap into it because of my support system. I have a husband and a small family and 2 young children, and I would not be able to do this if I didn't have that support system. You know, coming from a privilege. So it's
very nice.
Like it's 10% bravery, but 90% just privilege and luck and
very humble of yours. Really, very nice, Laura.
But so the bison, I was just toying around with some logos on the website that I first started on, and came across the bison and thought, I love the way that looks. It represents strength. It represents stability. But more than that, I was actually born in Buffalo, New York. And I have my roots kind of going back to there. And I know it's a bison, but my dad is a huge Buffalo Bills fan. And like, I mean, they got so close to actually getting into the Super Bowl this year. He was ecstatic. Like, it was the first year they even had, I think it was like the first year they actually got into the playoffs in like 25 years. I mean, something insane. So he's been a hardcore Bills fan for so long. So it's just kind of a throwback to my hometown. I only lived there for 10 years, so I don't, but my family's still there and a lot of my extended relatives and things like that. So it is a symbol of solidarity, strength, the American conservation story of the bison.
Absolutely.
So I thought it was
nature
a good
and wildlife in its best, really. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I hope to, even though I am an ornithologist, I don't want to just focus on birds. And I think that the bison can encapsulate all of the protection and conservation that I hope to do through Nova Conservation.
Great explanation. And Nova Conservation is really having a very interesting business model. Can you tell us a little bit more what you are doing there? Because, I don't want to give it away because I read, of course, on your website, but it's better to hear it from you yourself.
Sure. So we have pivoted a few times. So I feel like it keeps changing and tweaking just a little tiny bit here and there. But thank you for saying that. Let's see, it started, I'll just really quickly, it started over a year ago, right before the pandemic. And I thought I was just going to do an ecotourism company that takes people out to experience this unique research that we do as biologists and conservationists. However, then the pandemic hit. And so we had to pivot for the first time and no one could travel and everyone was stuck inside. So I thought, what's a better way to help conservation, not by just organizing these trips, but by actually creating a database that will help individuals who want to go on these trips find the right opportunities for them, the right opportunities to give back to conservation. So we started a website that people can post and organizations can post any opportunity. However, what I found out through a lot of this market research and a lot of talking to organizations is that some of these organizations offer really unethical trips. And we have done a very big deep dive into ethics. We're partnering with a lot of ethical committees and making sure that any organization that posts on our website is verified. Mm-hmm. And that's actually kind of leads into the next step and the next pivot, which is we have now a database, which is not released to the public yet, but 300 organizations with reviews and a verified or not verified tag attached to them, so that only the verified organizations are able to post their opportunities. And we're also making it really clear, because some of these unethical organizations post opportunities that are, hey, we would like a volunteer or we would like an intern, but then it requires payment by an early career conservationist. It's not clearly communicated. The expectations are unclear. It's a little maybe not ethical, not only to the early career conservationists, but sometimes just to them, but also to the planet and to the animals. It's a system of weeding out organizations that are not doing their due diligence and actually helping conservation and helping these early career conservationists. And we're trying to lift up and raise up the organizations, the nonprofits, the non-governmental associations, and the ethical ecotourism companies that are making a difference. And unfortunately, because it's all about money, those are the ones that are underfunded, underpaid, can't afford the advertising budget, can't afford the marketing. So no one really knows about them except through word of mouth. So we're trying to just create this database where it makes it easy for people to find the good, the best organizations, and helps those NGOs find not just early career conservationists who would be willing to work with them, but trip participants, maybe an older demographic. And I mean older as in like me, I'm in my 30s up to 60s, who has the ability to pay for a biological give back experience. Yes. Someone who has maybe a biology degree or who hasn't been able to use their passion for conservation and maybe works at a desk job, or wants to give back and has kids and they want their kids to experience nature in a unique way, and they can't find that trip. They don't want to just sit on a beach in Florida. Yeah. They want to actually see sea turtles in action or learn about environmental education. How do you find these experiences, and how do you know you're actually giving back to the right, most solid, verified nonprofits that are doing the best hands on the ground work?
Great. So yeah, that's very valuable. So what you are doing effectively is kind of a quality control and quality assurance of these companies and nonprofits which are advertising themselves. So when then there is this Nova Conservation Bison on it as a label, that's a label of quality and I can trust in it. And that's a great thing to start, honestly. Congratulations. That really is very interesting. And
Thank you.
Yeah, no, really, it's amazing. And also on your website, I see you can book certain trips, and you were referring to ecotourism. They go to Peru and Puerto Rico and all these interesting places. Very interesting. Coming back a little bit more to your career as a female, in your career, did you find some obstacles being female versus another gender? Is that more difficult? Also pay-wise, is that something that you realized?
It's interesting. Pay-wise, I have not worked an actual full-time big girl job, as quote unquote is what they call. I haven't really discovered a difference in pay from an equal compared to a male counterpart. So I have not personally. I know that exists for sure, but as a female, I think the challenges fall in two main ways for me. When I'm out doing field work by myself, I have to be extra careful and extra safe. And there are so many instances of abuse in the industry, and not just when you're out in the field. Things can get a little touchy and a little sketchy, but also just people that you interact with when you're in the backwoods of the American South. And it's not just for females, but especially, I'm a fairly tall white female, but especially for minorities and especially for those of shorter stature, those minorities definitely feel vulnerable. And then the other thing I will say about being a woman in particular is the guilt of having children and feeling like I should be staying home. I'm not making enough money to sustain this career. How dare I leave my home and to go on a 3-month field job away? I shouldn't be leaving my children for months at a time to pursue my passions and my goals and my career objectives. That in and of itself is an emotional.
Of course. So obviously society is still reflecting that back on you. And of course, I can imagine that this takes a lot of people aback and they reconsider then doing that, which is so bad and sad. Yeah. So very interesting to hear that. So when you give them this label of being a good vetted company providing these kind of services, then they also know that you are taking this into consideration, the female perspective, minority perspective. That's great to hear.
We are trying to be as transparent as possible. And that's what this industry needs, is transparency and authenticity. So we are trying, yes.
Very well. Thank you so much, Laura. I think we could carry on for hours, and because we did already in the pre-talk talk a lot about migratory birds and sleeping birds in flight and dolphins and everything, we can really go on forever. But I think in the interest of time of our viewers, we should probably come to a wrap up here right now. And to do so, I think whoever is interested in your work should visit your website, I think. So can you give us your website address, please? What is that?
Of course, it is novaconservation.com, all one word. We do have a new website coming. It's It's in the works. We have an app in development, which is just incredible to think about.
Yes.
A huge shout out to the MVP Now team in Atlanta. So I am very excited to see where that's coming, but we have our reviews and our database, and then we'll continue to just publish as many experiences as possible and continue to fight for ethical treatment of animals, continued conservation benefit for all people, and the health of our ecosystems, for our ecosystem services, and especially for early career conservationists and those of minorities and those of lower socioeconomic status.
Wow, great work that you're doing there. Congratulations again. Really, that's very brave to use this word again. But it's really, in the end, to just encapsulate that in one sentence, what you're doing there is really around quality on the one hand and about respect on the other hand. Respect for the animals, respect for the globe, respect for minorities, respect for women. So we could carry on forever. So very high moral standards, which I highly appreciate what you're doing. And I'm very glad that you share your story with us here at Wisdom. So whoever out there is interested in what we are doing, I also give our website address away. That's womenin.science. So it's a different ending, womenin.science, or follow us on Instagram under women_in_science. And whoever is inspired by what Laura is doing and how she was sharing her really fabulous story here with us should share the story as well, your story, on our Instagram channel. So yeah, thank you so much, Laura, for taking the time of talking to us on this inaugural podcast, as you called this phrase, which I really love. It was a huge pleasure talking to you and seeing your passion and how inspiring you are for a lot of other young women out there and trying to make the transition from academia into industry. Thank you so much and have a great day. Thank you.
Dirk, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure and an honor.